Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, I'm John, this is many a true nerd, and welcome to Medieval 2 Total War. Oh, it is good. It is good to be here. I know this game, I love this game, and this game is fascinating, especially as we've just all come from Rome Total War. And Medieval 2 and Total War form a really interesting pair of games to look at next to each other. Because if you asked me to name like my favourite games of all time, Rome Total War ends up not quite right at the top, but really, really damn high. Probably my second favourite game of all time. Only Fallout New Vegas is ahead of it. Rome Total War pretty safely and securely at number 2. I can't think of anything that would really be able to displace it. Medieval 2, I wouldn't put that high, and yet on every single way that I look at Medieval 2, when I kind of compare Medieval 2 and Rome, Medieval 2 took Rome, and it pretty much every way it improved it. Like, the battles, I think, work a lot better in various ways, and they fix a lot of stuff about how, like, the campaign map works, and how the campaign works, and how the economy works. Like, in every single way, Medieval 2 feels like it built upon the foundation of Rome Total War. But for me, is Rome Total War still the better game, even if I like Rome more? Ooh! Interesting questions that I think we'll probably try and dig into while we begin this wonderful new campaign. Oh, Medieval 2. You know what, let's leave that aside for now and just say I love this game and I am so thrilled to be able to begin this series. So, in we come to the select faction screen. We are, of course, doing a grand campaign. The campaign works very similar to Rome Total War's campaign. You start off with a small number of territories, you have to conquer a large number of territories. In Rome, it used to be standardized, it was always 50 plus Rome. In this game, it actually changes a little bit. So, for example, if we go over to Spain right now, they have to hold 45 regions, and that includes Jerusalem and Granada, because the Reconquista is kind of part of Spain's big objectives, for example. Whereas if we go over to, say, Scotland's grand campaign, 45 regions. I would have expected actually England to be taken out there, but no, it's just 45 including Jerusalem. I think Holy Roman Empire is... Yeah, Holy Roman Empire is 45 and must include Rome as well. So it's no longer just like Rome plus 50, now it is somewhere between 40 and 50, and a city that matters. Sometimes it's Rome, sometimes it's Jerusalem, as like the result of a successful crusade. Sometimes for like Spain, it's related to the Reconquista. So the objectives are a bit more tailored to the faction now. People aren't all going for the same thing. One thing that's really changed since Rome Total War, by the way, is the game map isn't quite so balanced at the beginning anymore. Back in Rome Total War, pretty much everyone began on roughly the same footing. Everyone began with 3 and 5 territories. I know technically lots of territories began with 2, like the Roman faction actually began with 2 cities each, but like, you know, there was basically a rebel city gifted to you as a training city to take over, because of course the game knew that the Roman faction would be the ones you'd be playing first, because the Roman are the only ones that start off unlocked. So broadly, everyone was pretty balanced. That's not true in Medieval 2 Total War. I actually think it's a bit of a nice change. There's the tiny factions, like Scotland starts up there with only like a single territory, or you've got Portugal that starts off with 2 territories, or Sicily with only 2 as well, whereas there's much bigger, tougher territories. So France, I think, starts off with, I think that's 5, and the Holy Roman Empire, actually that starts off with 6. The Holy Roman Empire starts off with. So there's tougher factions, meaning like, you know, you can't always just kind of go barging in and pretty much know that if you're taking on one faction one-on-one, you're going to be as tough as them, and broadly you stand a chance. In this game, there are big kids in the playground that you don't want to mess with too early. But you know what, ladies and gentlemen, let me set the scene for you. This game begins in 1080. It is about a millennium since the events of Rome Total War and Julianus Vatinius took place, when he managed to unify Africa and Europe and Italy and the Near East and the Far East and the Middle East. Oh, Julianus Vatinius, he did it all. And unfortunately, it hasn't gone so well in the meantime, as you can probably see, for all these factions that are just kind of floating around in little bits and pieces. It all went a bit wrong. Unfortunately, after Julianus Vatinius went to space to found Space Rome, the people who followed him were not up to his standard. And to be honest, we should have expected that, shouldn't we? I mean, who could live up to the skill of Julianus Vatinius? And it's all fallen apart a bit. Europe has disintegrated into rebel independent states and small scattered warring empires. Of Rome itself, the only real survivor is the Byzantine Empire over there. They try and keep the Brutii spirit alive, but honestly they're struggling slightly. Egypt's flipping back. Don't know how they came back, but Egypt's flipping recovered. Julianus Vatinius is turning in his grave, which he can do because presumably he was like buried in space, so his coffin can like spin in space, so it's fine. And that brings me to which faction we're going to play as, because I had a lot of different thoughts about this. Like, you know, I thought, okay, how about England? England might be fun, but then I thought, no, that campaign's a bit easy, because once they've secured actually the United Kingdom itself, then it's a bit too easy just to have like 7 territories that no one can ever really bother getting to. So that's a little bit too easy. And I thought about France, because that's kind of right in the middle of Europe, so you're basically surrounded by enemies from all sides. That's a kind of a big, complex, quite hard campaign. I don't know the fact they begin with 5 whole territories, to be honest, because it means you don't really get to build the empire for yourself. And then I thought about Spain. They start with only 2 territories, and it's nice for them to have like the Reconquista against the Moors. But once you've cleared out Spain, you just kind of expand into Africa, and you've not really got much competition down here. You can just kind of expand in this direction, and yeah, clear out Portugal, and Spain basically becomes United Kingdom. It's a nice, safe, little, strong economy, and I wasn't so keen on that. I wanted something a bit more interesting. And then I thought, why am I talking about these remnants of Roman rule, these disgraces to the memory of Julianus Vatinius? I thought there's one faction that was never actually conquered by Rome, that looks down on what happened in Europe, at the rise and stagnation and then total decline and collapse of Rome, with a mix of confusion and pity, and the question, could we have done it any better? Ladies and gentlemen, in this playthrough, we are putting aside the legions of Rome. Instead, we are taking up the Viking axe. We are playing as Denmark. Denmark is a fascinating, really, really interesting faction to play as, to my mind. One, they start off as the joint smallest faction in the game. They basically start off in the weakest position you can start off with. Joint with Scotland, only 2 factions. Actually, no, sorry, my mistake. Only 3 factions, Russia as well. Yeah, only 3 factions start off with a single territory. You've got Russia, you've got Scotland, and you've got Denmark. But I don't really consider kind of Russia part of that list, because Russia's got a huge amount of like empty space that it can expand into without any real competition whatsoever. Denmark does not have that flipping luxury. Directly to the south of Denmark, logically the only place it's going to really be able to expand pretty damn quickly, is the Holy Roman Empire, the biggest empire in the world. 6 territories, and with more rebel territories around it that it will no doubt be able to seize at least some of. So basically, I've got a big neighbour to the south that I don't get on with particularly well. We'll have to fight a war with them sooner or later, but when we do, we will absolutely be at a massive disadvantage. So that's very, very fun indeed. As for the campaign settings, I'm going for difficulty and battle difficulty as hard and hard rather than very hard I went for in Rome. The reason for that is in Rome, to my mind, this slightly stupid battle AI made it quite easy to exploit things to your advantage. So therefore I didn't mind like the computer being able to just kind of magic massive armies out of nowhere that they blatantly shouldn't have been able to afford, because to my mind it kind of made the game balanced against the fact that it was very easy to exploit. Medieval 2 fixes a lot of those exploits, so as a result I think just playing it on hard and hard is the best setting to having a good fun game. But you know what, ladies and gentlemen, that is enough setup. Grab your battle axe and report to the longboat. It is time for the adventures of Denmark to begin.
Denmark and its people have grown far beyond their Viking past. The tenacity of the country has now been turned towards forming a kingdom, with conquest and colonization replacing raids and spoils. Ferocious in battle, the Danish people have lost none of their past expertise at war. However, a country requires not only a warrior, but a statesman to lead it to greater glory.
I don't know about that, narrator monk. The pen may be mightier than the sword, but the battle axe, I feel like that's got the pen. And here we are in summer 1080, and the game begins with our single one territory here. Marvellous. Welcome to Medieval 2 Total War, which should immediately look, in all fairness, very, very familiar indeed. We're back in Europe, we've got a battle, we've got a beautiful battle map. It certainly looks a lot more attractive than Rome was, and I do enjoy a good map of Europe. Just give me a game with a map of Europe and I'm allowed to march troops around. I'm happy, alright? I'm happy with that. Basic interface probably looks pretty bloody familiar to you, and indeed broadly it is. We've still got cities, they still produce a certain amount of money, you can still see happiness, you can still see whether they're growing or not. You've still got armies with captains, or armies indeed with actual generals on them. And you've also got some agents floating around on the battle map as well. Except some of these of course are new. In fact, actually, most of these are new. The spy, that's pretty bloody familiar. You'll probably know what a spy is. Yes, they pretty much do exactly what they always used to do. Except we've got a couple of new ones floating around as well. Oh, and one thing someone did remind me when I kind of said on Twitter I was going to be doing the Denmark campaign, as if this was just made to be, the admiral that you start with when you're Denmark is Admiral John. So that's nice. Let's just get him safely into port. I don't want anything bad to happen to Admiral John. Now, thing number one. If you're Danish, I'd like to apologise to you immediately and in advance for all of the things I'm going to mispronounce. Like in Danish, I don't really know how you'd pronounce that accurately. It looks quite close to Ourhaus, so I'm just going to call this Ourhaus. So this is our house, this is where we live. In fact, actually, I'm allowed to rename things. That's actually a new thing that was introduced in Medieval 2. You could rename all of the cities, which was nice. So I'm just going to quickly rename that to make sure that I'm actually right. So this is now our house. This is where we live. And again, things probably look immediately very, very similar to you. And in fact, the one thing we need to do immediately is we need to put the tax rates up. Because everyone in the Total War games basically is really happy to pay really, really high tax rates all the time. That gets us some money in. This is actually one of the huge changes that was made in Medieval 2 Total War, by the way. They fixed the economy from Rome 1, because in Rome Total War, basically, if you just did some basic stuff, then you ended up with literally more money than you were capable of spending. You could go around the battle map, basically flinging great forums and colosseums in every city that wanted them, and still just have a treasury full of 6 figures worth of money. Getting ludicrously rich was ludicrously simple. They really fixed that in Medieval 2. Money is much more restricted. You're going to have a lot less money floating around, which is really, really damn good. It makes the game much more interesting, so that was a fantastic fix. Now, the other big thing they changed, probably the biggest, most important change in the entire game, in fact, is basically in Rome Total War, you had a city. And in that city, you built buildings, and those buildings let you produce troops. So basically, any city could be both an economic and military powerhouse. Sure, you had to make decisions about which way you went first, but ultimately, given enough time and given enough money, there's nothing to stop a city being like a massive economic powerhouse that's producing ridiculous amounts of money and being absolutely huge with loads of citizens, and also being able to produce the best troops in the Empire. There was no kind of contradiction there whatsoever. Just with enough time and money, that was absolutely 100% fine. Medieval 2 Total War basically said, no, that's stupid, you're not allowed to do that anymore. And the way it did that was it basically started splitting things out into cities versus castles. Basically, Ourhaus is a city, and that means it is a population and economic centre. That basically means we can put the tax rate up, so we make a lot more money through taxes. We can grow the city up to being a huge city, just like in Rome Total War, and that lets you access, for example, more farming upgrades. You can make more farming money, and of course, you can also invest in more kind of trading infrastructure, so you can make more trading money. So basically, that means this place is designed to make money and get big. However, you've probably noticed a few absentees. This is already a large town, but the amount of military stuff I can build here is relatively small. You'll probably notice, well, we've got a ballista maker here. We don't have like an archery range, for example. I can't train any archers here whatsoever. I can't really train any cavalry here whatsoever. In short, what I can train here is extremely limited, and the troops I can train here are not actually that good. So, for example, right now I can build town militia, the equivalent of town watch from Rome Total War, if you like. Not really that damn solid at all. And if I were to invest in, say, an actual town guard, confusingly enough, that wouldn't actually let me build town watch either. That would let me build spear militia. A little bit better, but, you know, these still aren't great stats at all. Now, I could, of course, convert Ourhaus to a castle if I wanted to, and basically you can switch between towns and castles, decide which places you want to be towns and which places you want to be castles. But I don't really want to do that on this occasion because I'd rather have Ourhaus be a nice little territory that's going to produce a load of money. So you can see up there it's kind of got itself a bunch of stuff. It's got fish, it's got, what is that? I think that's amber up there. More fish. So this place could be a valuable trading settlement in time. So I don't want it to be a castle. Not least as we actually have a castle right down here in Hamburg, logically our first starting position. So speaking of Hamburg, we're not really sure what's going on there right now. So let's send our spy, Kolbane of Holmar. Sadly, by the way, you can't rename people. You're allowed to rename places, but not people in this game, which is a shame. So we'll send him over here. Oh, and you've got little movies now. When you actually send agents in now, you actually got little movies. You could just skip them and find out what happened. But yeah, you're actually allowed to see your spies and assassins and stuff doing stuff now, which is really, really damn cool. So in comes a guard. And now we see whether he's succeeded or not. Yep, that is it. He's managed to kill a guard, and now he's replaced the guard. These are really fun, by the way, especially the assassin ones. The spy ones aren't so good, but some of the assassination ones are just hilarious. So now, obviously, we've stepped inside, and we now know that this place has spear militia, peasant archers, and peasant archers. This was nothing I really liked about Medieval 2, by the way. In Rome Total War, no, I don't need to see that again, thank you. In Rome Total War, rebel settlements were just kind of held by pretty much like a token force. For the most part, like pretty much just the rebels that were there, were just there to keep the place warm until you showed up and took it over. In Medieval 2, plenty of rebel settlements have some really, really damn big armies. Like, if I was playing as Spain right now, there's a little city down here, I can't remember which one it is now, but it's basically got like a half-stack army and actually a general with a proper general's bodyguard guarding it, and it's a flipping rebel settlement, which is really, really damn tough. And actually not too far away from Denmark's starting location, there's more territories that have a flipping ton of quite good defense in them, despite being rebels, which is actually really, really nice, because it means, like, the beginning of the game is still a land grab, naturally, because there's so many rebel territories around, but it's not like as much of an easy land grab as it was in Rome Total War. We basically just went around taking territories. Instead, you've actually got to properly focus your strength in places, because it is a little bit more tricky than it used to be to actually kind of take over these areas. You'd also realise very, very quickly, unlike Rome Total War, you don't get a massive tech advantage just by virtue of being a player faction. No, the rebels will very often have pretty damn solid tech as well. So, for example, Hamburg over here, yeah, we've got spear militia with experience, spear militia without experience, peasant archers with experience, peasant archers without. Now, as I just kind of showed a minute ago, I can't even flipping train spear militia yet. That's actually beyond what I'm capable of training at the moment. So, yeah, these rebels, they're not messing around. And in terms of my starting armies, I don't really have anything that much better than what's being fielded right now. This army over here is 2 spear militia, 2 peasant archers. So basically the same thing, but without the actual experience. Over in Ourhaus, I've got 2 more spear militia, some flipping peasants, some peasant archers, and some superior archers. Keep those guys safe, by the way. Keep them back and keep them bloody safe, because we're not going to be able to retrain those guys for quite a bloody long time. And over in the army over here with the factionaire, just more flipping spear militias, and more Norse archers and more peasant archers. So as opposed to Rome Total War, where you just kind of send over your Hastati and take over your first settlement by just kind of, you know, walking over some flipping peasants and peltas or whatever. No, no, no. This game takes things a lot more seriously, damn it. And that means there's actually a much bigger place in this game for mercenaries, to my mind. You really do genuinely need mercenaries. So if I look at, say, my spear militia, yeah, 5 attack, 7 defense. If you go over to your mercenaries, however, what you'll find sitting around a lot of the place is mercenary spearmen. Attack 7, total defense 14. Vastly, vastly superior to your troops. So, to my mind, actually, you find in Medieval 2, you're actually a lot more dependent on mercenaries, which I think is actually a lot more interesting, because mercenaries are actually also quite expensive in these days, especially these bloody mercenary crossbowmen, costing like 118 upkeep, which is actually pretty expensive if you compare them to like my troops. My troops are like, yeah, 100, 125 upkeep. So these guys are actually expensive in terms of upkeep and really expensive in terms of recruitment, but they're worth it because they're going to be vastly superior to anything I can train for the time being. So I'm totally going to buy both of these mercenary spearmen. Yeah, I think that's actually totally worth having. And I've probably just picked up the, yes, mercenary captain, 10% discount from unit training cost, 10% bonus to cash from looting. Very, very good indeed. So as I say, we've got a town right now, we don't have a castle, that's a castle, we definitely want to be going and getting that. So Prince Charles is going to be wanting to immediately head over here and take that place. So let's just pop down here and also just kind of shove a watchtower down, because that's worth doing for the time being, just give us a little bit better visibility. I think we can see right away, yep, Holy Roman Empire directly to the south of us, and once we've taken Hamburg, we're going to have a border with them straight away. So we're going to want to go and talk to them pretty bloody soon, actually. For the time being, Prince Charles heads over here to Hamburg and puts them under siege. Ah! Okay, we've got an interesting thing here. We've actually got gates open. This is not just a basic little crappy town like you'd find early on in Rome Total War. This is a castle. Castles have a lot of defences and a lot of very bad things about them in general, but open gates, letting you bypass the walls, that's not the worst thing in the world at all. Ah, you know what? This is going to decide it for me. There's actually an extra unit of mercenary spearmen. Yeah, I'm going to buy them, and I'm going to say, with 3 units of mercenary spearmen, I think we're just going to straight up try and storm this place now with the gates open. Though, this is not necessarily going to be the easiest thing in the world, damn it. We do need a castle, so getting it done now, not the worst thing in the world at all. Though before we dive in here, I should probably actually check out what Prince Charles, our factioner, is actually flipping like, because I hadn't actually done that yet. So he has got himself tutor +1 piety, 5% bonus on, ooh, trade income tutor is good. Mercenary captain we just picked up. So, anything good in terms of his morale? Generous, penalty on tax income, smart, little bit of a bonus on tax income and trade income. Talent with numbers, okay. This is promising. Prince Charles could potentially be a useful little administrator. That's relatively rare. Now, what you'll probably find is there's much less in terms of the traits that give you morale, because morale is now more linked to this new stat, chivalry. Basically, if you're extremely chivalrous, your own troops will get morale bonuses. If you are extremely Dready? If you have a lot of dread, which is the alternative to chivalry, if you do good things, you become chivalrous, your own troops get morale bonuses, basically. If you do bad things, then you become dread, I need to figure out what the adjective is from that. You become dready, and as a result, the opponent loses morale. They get morale penalties. In all fairness, like, the end result is basically the same, so it doesn't make too much difference, but you're pretty much always going to want to have chivalry rather than dread if you can, because chivalry has a lot more bonuses in town. We'll get to that when we actually have some chivalrous people floating around. But for the time being, yeah, there's going to be no morale penalties or bonuses on either side, so let's just get on with this.
The wolves will feast on enemy corpses, or I am no warrior. This I promise you. Now fight well!
The speeches in Medieval 2 were a lot worse. Some people were actually saying to me during Rome Total War that they kind of were looking forward to Medieval 2 because the speech was so much better. No, the speeches are vastly worse in Medieval 2. The speeches are kind of funnier in Medieval 2 because when you're taking on, like, you know, that was really short because it's just some rebels in a castle. There's nothing remarkable about them. Like, if I was taking on, say, like the French or the English or the Spanish, my guy would probably say something about the French or the English or the Spanish. And actually be some, like, comical insults related to who you're actually fighting. But the speeches are also a lot less personalised versus Rome Total War, with a lot more interesting things that were kind of said based on... Are you on fire? Oh no, you're just holding a torch next to your flipping wooden shield. That's a terrible idea. They'd say more kind of comical racist slurs, but other than that, there wasn't really much interesting going on, to be honest. Now. Say hello, by the way. Say hello to a bloody flipping castle. So one thing you might notice immediately is in Rome Total War, what you'd often find when you're going up to a settlement is, you know, there'd be kind of huge swathes of the wall where basically there were no wall defences. You could, like, you know, an area like this long would just have no defence. There'd be like one tower over here and one around the corner here, leaving you a massive swathe of wall to just walk up to. No, they fixed that in Medieval 2, and much for the better. Wait, how many gates? Oh, it's literally just the one gatehouse. I thought there was, I could have sworn there was a second gatehouse. No, never mind. It kind of makes sense that, yeah, in a castle, there's only the one highly secure gate. So, we can walk in through this front gate, but, yeah, we're going to have to run a pretty big flipping gauntlet of these flipping things together. In fact, there's going to be archers as well, so that's going to be fun. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have my spear militia up front, and they're basically going to draw the fire, because there's going to be archers, and then behind them, actually, you know what's probably more sensible? It's to have these guys then in the middle, as we're basically just going to bum rush the gate and try and go straight for the plaza, because I want to get as far away from the towers as quickly as possible. These guys are going to be like this, and then they're just basically going to start sprinting forward. These guys are going to draw the fire as we get up close. Then once these guys are through the gate, hopefully these guys will partly draw the fire off these guys when we're done. So, yeah, that will hopefully work, broadly. And yeah, the archers I want to keep back as far as possible because, yeah, I don't really want, especially the Norse archers, I don't want them getting hit. The general, we will be ready to move in, just not quite yet. I want everyone like this because we're going through a narrow gate, so I don't want them to kind of have to do the shuffle where they have to rearrange themselves. I think we're good like this. So, start the battle.
By the Holy Lord above, our spy has opened the gates.
And he hasn't, but he will do when we get close, it's fine. Now, things work very, very differently with tower defences in this game. Of course, back in Rome Total War, you can see there, the flag just went off this one right here. So yeah, in Rome Total War, what happened was all the defences in the town automatically belonged to the defender of the town. That was just like an automatic thing. And then if you walked through them, they changed possession into you, and as a result, they started firing on the people in the town because they were working for you now. That's changed. Now the defences will always, always, always belong to the defender. You cannot make them kind of work on your behalf. But on the other hand, they will only work when the defender is standing close to them. And you know when they're standing close to them because they'll gain a little flag. So right now, for example, that tower would start firing on me, but these towers over here would not fire on me. To my mind, this was actually a really, really nice change, because basically it removed, like, the incentive and the exploit that was really common in Rome Total War, where rather than actually just kind of attacking the front gate, you could instead just kind of send, like, you know, one guy way over here with just, like, some lads or whatever to take the walls, and then they just walk around the rest of the town, clearing out all the rest of the gates and whatever. Then you just walk around to the gate you've taken and ignore the gate they were actually defending. That's not a thing you can do anymore, so I think that's a really, really nice improvement. Now, Where are these guys? So we've got one spear militia down here. They're going to be evenly matched or slightly superior to my spear militia, but my mercenary spearmen will be able to have them in a fight. In fact, basically, my mercenary spearmen, one-on-one, can have anything in this place, which is nice. The archers have fallen back. Yeah, because the gates have fallen, they've basically decided they don't want to do this that much. So instead, what we need to do now is we need to pretty much just send our guys running straight forward. So they're going to be running straight past these towers, and these towers will do... Actually, these towers will do... okay. Same basic rules apply here as in Rome Total 1, by the way. Unit scale makes towers better or worse, obviously. So I've actually set my unit scale to huge. The unit scale is actually smaller in this game than in Rome. So you may remember in Rome, if you basically went for huge, you'd have... I think it was about 180 units, 160, 180 units. Now the large unit scale is actually more like 150. So even on huge unit scale, it's now... Guys, keep running. Keep flipping running, guys. Why are we stopping? Just everyone, just keep on the forward movement, please. Lovely. Yep, there we are. The gate's open for us. Now our spear militia can go straight on over there and throw themselves into these archers because they won't be able to do very well against those. Meanwhile, the rest of our troops can head around here and fight this spear militia around here. Now, probably at this point, we're pretty safe too, yeah. So my spear militia up front is now taking on archers, but one-on-one archers won't do very well. We'll take some casualties, but it'll be alright. Now these guys are currently not actually moving, which is interesting. Right, now where are my mercenary spearmen? Because I definitely need you guys to be coming around here and fighting these guys. Now, probably we're safe at this point to bring my general up and have him help out with the peasant archers, because he'll do very, very nicely indeed. Cavalry. Very, very interesting in this game. Basically, of course, you may remember in Rome Total War, the problem with cavalry was it was vastly, ludicrously, ridiculously overpowered. Now, they fixed that in... Ooh, hello, the towers went off for a second there. And, wait... Is it just because... No, the towers have indeed gone off. Marvellous. Someone just forgot to pay the electricity bill or something for the towers. Yeah, basically they fixed the fact that cavalry were ludicrously overpowered in Rome Total War, in Medieval 2 Total War, by making it even more ludicrously powerful. No, seriously, that's actually what they did. And it actually worked pretty bloody well. Yeah, I think I can actually get round the back of these guys, because these guys are actually firing over here. So probably I'm better off moving my horses. No, not you! You go over there. General, I need you to loop round the side and engage with these archers, just to kind of keep them busy to make sure they don't reload. So my general's moving around here. Yeah, the thing is, heavy cavalry now, their charge is now... Oh, don't even need to, because you can get over to here, that's fine. The rest of you, however, can probably turn your attention to these guys. Yeah, the thing is, cavalry, their charge in this game is ludicrous. But yeah, unlike Rome Total War, where you can just kind of click away, then click on, then click away, then click on to get, like, basically infinite flipping charges. No, cavalry now need a really good run-up, or they won't do a proper charge anymore. You can probably just kind of charge into these guys. You do a pretty good job as well, so that's nice. But you see here, they're holding their swords right now. They do have lances as well, but unless they get a good run-up, they won't put their lances down. So probably they won't actually get a good charge on these here archers. No, they're not going to. Oh, and by the way, the plaza now also has towers guarding it. So there's actually a tower back here that's kind of going to shoot down at my guys. So I need to be careful of that. So probably I don't actually want my general here, to be honest. These guys are shaken. Yeah, I kind of want to get my general out of here, to be honest. I'd rather have him over there helping out with these guys. So we're just going to have him... Oh, these guys are... You know, just hang on now. If they've broken, just quickly mop them up. There we are. You can see... Oh, yeah. Troops are no longer killed. They're technically captured at this exact moment in time. So let's also capture these guys, because this is an excellent time to capture all of these lads. Hang on. Yeah. Capture all of them. Capture all of them while they're breaking. And huge number of troops are suddenly being captured. Right. Let's get my general out of there. I don't want him accidentally taking an arrow and being killed from the tower. Now, what's going on at the battle for the gate here? One thing you'll also notice, by the way, is basically routing is a lot slower than it used to be. Units will stand and fight much, much, much more effectively. Because, yeah, in Rome Total War, the big thing you were constantly chasing was the rout moment. You basically just kind of, you know, wanted to throw your war dogs around as best you could. You wanted to just kind of, you know, throw your cavalry into the back or the flank, and that would trigger a rout, and then you could just basically wrap up an entire battle line, and the entire line would just collapse really, really quickly. That doesn't happen in Medieval 2, or rather, it does, but nowhere near as much. Battles are much more about slow slugging fests. So instead, yeah, these guys are wavering already. Like, even though they're wavering, even though they're massively outnumbered, even though they've got no chance of winning, they will stand and fight for quite some time yet, unless you've actually got something nearby to trigger the rout. So I'm going to send my general round the back here, to... Oh, I think they've actually broken. Yep, they have indeed broken. So even though he was wavering at 94 troops, he actually kept fighting until he had like 70. So like, you know, they will stand and fight while wavering a very, very long time. Lovely. And we've got a whole bunch of people captured here as well. Capturing matters more when you're taking on actual kind of forces out in the field. In the city, it doesn't matter because these forces will just like disappear or whatever. Right, now, what I want to do at this point is I want to send you to... Oh, gosh. Come on, don't just stand in arrow fire, for goodness sake. What have we got left at this point? We've got spear militia left, and that's your lot. Fine. So you guys, back off over here. As we've got spear militia left, I think we can actually do a little bit of the Rome Total Wars here. Let's actually bring up our toughest spearmen. And now it is safe to actually bring up our archers as well. So let's see if we can just kind of pepper these spear militia, because archers still work very, very nicely against spearmen who are all clustered together. So instead we'll just pepper these guys, see if we can lure them off the plaza, and if not, we'll actually just weaken them that way. So we don't really want to kind of just charge in and take these guys out, because of course right now, because they're standing close to this tower now activates and gives them a bit of defensive bonus. This is one of the many, many advantages to fighting in a castle. You've got big, tough walls, even at low levels of castle. You've got kind of, you know, towers everywhere. These towers will do a pretty good job cutting down our guys as well. You've got more towers overlooking the plaza, and having towers close by to the actual plaza as a final defensive point, that was a really, really nice addition from Rome Total War. I really liked that, because it just gave, if you were in a castle, like, defender's advantage was ridiculously huge, which is exactly what it should be. That's what a castle is for. A castle is a place that you put on the landscape. You know, potentially you might even take it down and turn it into a castle if it's a point where you know enemies are likely to be attacking, because you know even if they're coming, even if they've got superior troops, you can hold out there really, really nicely. Just because of the huge defender's advantage that you've got off the towers and the walls and everything. And later levels of castles, it gets crazy. I can't wait to show off later levels of castles, because the way they go is just utterly, utterly mad, and it's beautiful. It's one of my favourite things about Medieval 2. But like, even this basic castle, this isn't actually the basic castle, this is actually a level 2 castle. The basic castle is just a motte and bailey. A basic wall, nice. Actually, the motte and bailey is actually really nice in its own way too. But yeah, when you get to fortresses and citadels, there's some crazy, hilariously good defences. I can't wait to get to them. So, good quality mercenary spearmen hanging around here. And actually, you know what I'll also do? I will have my general come over here to potentially charge into the side of these guys in case they do actually happen to take the bait. Now, the fact that I've actually drawn up these guys ahead of time means there's actually half a chance they might get a proper charge. Because, yeah, they need to be actually positioned correctly. If they're all facing forwards, then there's half a chance when they charge in, they might actually put their lancers down. That's possible. I might need to... I'm just going to pull them back a little bit further. So they've just got a little bit more charging space. I'm going to make them really narrow right here. And I'm hoping we might be able to demonstrate a big lance charge. Because the charges off the knights was just utterly ridiculous. But yeah, you needed big open space and a great big run-up, or they wouldn't do it. Which was really, really nice. It meant basically knights in the open field was stupidly powerful. When you actually got, say, into cities, their power was much more restricted, which was a really, really nice balance. Now, you guys, by the way, you can fire at will. Lovely. And these Norse archers in particular will do a lovely, lovely job. These guys are great, by the way. This is one of the special units of the Vikings. Or rather, I shouldn't call them the Vikings. Oh, also, why are you using the fire arrows? Don't do the fire arrows. I mean, do if you want, but you don't have to. This is a unique Danish unit. I'm probably just going to call them the Vikings. That's probably, like, you know, historically inaccurate or whatever. I'm just going to keep calling them the Vikings. Yeah, this is a unique Viking unit. The nice thing about these guys is basically they've got a good sword and good armor, so even if they get attacked, they can actually hold their own. In fact, actually, they're probably superior to my actual spear militia. This is probably the strongest unit in terms of attack I've got on the ground here. Yes, indeed, the melee attack of these guys is 12. The melee attack on my Norse archers is 12. It's actually much more powerful than their missile attack, though I don't want to waste them right now, versus 5 attack for my spear militia, or 7 attack for my mercenary spearmen, though they have the armor and the shielding, which is the advantage. These guys are... Actually, they've got defense 16. No, indeed, the Norse archers, my flipping archers, are vastly superior actual infantry to everything else I've got on the field, which is hilarious. Anyway, it looks like these guys have actually taken the bait, which is marvellous, so just kind of one more round at them, and then you guys can probably stop firing now. They're probably going to run over here, straight into these guys, are they? No! They're mysteriously going to try and flipping... Alright, fine, if you guys want to get yourself flipping surrounded, that's fine. Just kind of, you know, shoot into the back of them for a minute. So my mercenary spearmen are now going to charge into the back of these guys, and they're now charging at my... They're trying to charge at my general. Hasn't worked out well for them, unfortunately. So I'm just going to back off for a second. That's a shame. I would have liked to have got a good charge. I'm just going to back off my general because I don't want him actually fighting against these guys because these guys are spearmen. So now, yeah, now they're going to take on these guys. Which is all fine. And you know what? I'm just going to send one of my damaged units of spear militia out over in this direction. One of my horses, I think, actually got caught up on one of their spearmen there for a second. That's a shame. But yeah, basically, I'm just going to go and take the plaza now. I'm also going to send another unit of mercenary spearmen round the back to flank. I just don't want to send my general into these guys because, yeah, they are spearmen and they will hurt me. Oh, you're out here. What are you doing out here? Why are you over there, for goodness sake? Right, I'm not sure why these guys ended up over here. They just decided to just abandon the city. Well, that wasn't very clever of you. Right, we're going to go take the plaza right now, and in 3 minutes, of course, we will have won by default. Now, these guys might try and break off this fight. Oh, no! They are forming the Skiltrum. So after Rome Total War's Phalanxers, basically Medieval 2 said we're not going to do Phalanxers. And you can vaguely understand why, because Phalanxers were ludicrously strong. In Rome Total War. They were just basically invincible murder meat grinder machines. So Medieval 2 tried a few different ways of getting around that. One of them was the Skiltrum, which is basically just a bunch of spearmen just holding in a big circle with spears held out. It gives them a big advantage versus cavalry, but it makes them very, very vulnerable to indirect fire. They've given up the Skiltrum. I think they've realised they're actually under a little bit of fire. Fine. So we'll actually just kind of get back into you in that case. They might well kind of form up their Skiltrum again in a second. Also, skirmish mode off, please, lads. So, my mercenary spearmen are coming up the back, and once these guys are hitting the back, that should be the end of it. One thing I really loved in Medieval 2, if you actually zoomed right in, the men were much better at fighting. They actually did fight each other, you'll notice. So, like, you know, people would basically go one-on-one, and you would actually be able to see them fighting. It wasn't perfect, they'd still kind of vaguely wiggle at each other. But you could kind of see, like, when someone died, like in Rome Total War, they just vaguely wiggle their hands and swords and whatever at each other. In Medieval 2, you can actually see what was going on a lot better. Which is, you could see, like, you know, one person was fighting another person. When someone dies, you can literally go down and see how it was they died. Which person it was that stabbed them. You can tell who's actually injured and who's not doing well because they kind of go red like that. That means this guy's been bloodied. He's already taken a hit and another hit will actually kill him. And in general, it was just a really nice, elegant system. I did like it. I think this was partly what contributes to the fact battles were a lot slower. Like in, oh, there we go. I think we're happy to end this battle there, to be honest. Actually, you know what? No. We're going to let these guys try and retreat to the plaza. I'm not sure they're going to do very well. So now I'm going to run through my guys and probably all be captured as we go through. Lovely. Just capture all of these guys. Nice. Oh, yeah. Captured troops, you got to, if they were captured in the field, you could decide what to do with them later. Oh, never mind. I think actually it was also because, wait, did time run out or did time automatically run out because technically I've won the battle? I'm not sure. You know what? I think we've won anyway.
All civilized peoples will be awed by the victory we have won here today.
Yeah, that was pretty damn solid. That was definitely the right thing to do. We'd have lost way more men than that if we'd had to just kind of, you know, wait for a turn and also built a bunch of ladders and whatever. Because wall fighting in this game is really dangerous. And the reason wall fighting is so flipping dangerous is mainly because, as you've seen there, units are quite slow to break. And these towers will keep firing as long as there's troops standing next to them. If I want to come over here and take this bit, if their spear militia are holding this bit, that tower will keep spitting down at my troops as long as that battle's going on. Like, you will often find vastly superior infantry will still lose on warfights just because of the advantage of those towers pounding them. It's just a huge advantage, and it's what makes castles such a wonderful, beautiful part of Medieval 2.
They deserved nothing less than death!
Okay, so the fact that Prince Charles has just yelled in that voice, that means he's going a bit dready at the moment. He's just a little bit on the dready side. Now, we don't want that. We want as many generals as possible to be chivalrous, because it is just vastly better. The way that you basically determine which way your general's going is if you capture people out in the open field, because you may notice that little kind of captured rather than killed thing down in the bottom right during that battle, you can choose to, after a battle in the open field, either release them, ransom them back to whichever faction you've captured them off, though obviously that doesn't work for rebels, or just execute them. Executing them is obviously evil, releasing them is obviously good, and that affects your chivalry or dread. Same thing now applies to occupy, sack, or exterminate. Sack being the thing that's now replaced enslave, and slave has gone out of the game. Instead, now what happens is you massacre a little bit of the population, but you gain an absolute ton of money. Occupying, obviously, you gain a ton of money. Sacking, you gain loads of money, but massacre a little bit. Or you can massacre loads of people and make a bit of money. So sacking is just the way you basically make all the money without actually doing kind of full-on extermination. We don't want to do that. We just want to occupy this settlement instead. And that gets us our first territory, and as a result, yeah, trait increase, winning first. So merciless actions on the battlefield have increased this man's dread, +1 dread, but because I just actually decided to occupy that town without killing anyone, fair in rule, the common people under this man's rule have noted his sense of chivalry has grown. So probably he's still on neutral at the minute. Which is kind of the worst of both worlds. It means you don't get any benefit whatsoever. The way that chivalry and dread actually feed into things, I think if we actually go back over to Ourhaus and have a look at our faction leader, I'm pretty sure he'll start off with, yeah, he's got, oh, he's also neutral. Fine. Well, that's not useful. You're all flipping just filthy, despicable neutrals, aren't you? But anyway, welcome to Hamburg, welcome to our new castle. Fortunately, we don't have to repair this thing, because, yeah, we didn't actually do any damage, because we just had our spy open the gates for us. Very, very nice indeed. Now, because it's a castle, and thus not an economic centre, I cannot actually do anything to the tax rate here. It's stuck at normal, even though public order is really, really high. Basically, castles are always going to be really, really damn kind of happy. You're never really going to have many problems with, like, revolts or whatever in castles. They're just happy, happy places, but they're not going to make much money whatsoever, because their tax rate is stuck at low. You can still do some basic trading from them. Like, you can build a port, and it will generate some trade income. It's just you can't actually build, like, things like markets, for example, or any other kind of trade-related building. So as a result, they're not going to make that much. You can build mines or whatever. Be careful of mines, by the way. If you've come straight from Rome Total War, you're probably expecting mines to produce, like, you know, 200 gold a turn or whatever. Sorry, florins, technically. That's not necessarily true anymore. Mines are not just built on gold and silver anymore. They're also built on things like iron. So say, let's just actually check how much this one's worth. This is worth... Ah, that one's actually pretty good. That is worth 240 a turn. So potentially building mines here, very, very useful. What do you actually... Ah, that is actually a silver mine. Lovely. So Hamburg could potentially be a decent trading settlement in time. And part of the way you know kind of which settlements you want to be trading settlements versus which you want to be castles is, well, one, it's just based on your neighbours. So, you know, Hamburg is literally bordering Frankfurt in the hands of the Holy Roman Empire. So there's an argument for keeping Hamburg as a castle for some time. Just because, you know, until we know exactly what the Holy Roman Empire are going to be wanting to do this game, it's worth being careful with them. There's an excellent chance they'll probably pick a fight with someone else, and we'll keep an eye on, obviously, the diplomacy scrolls as they come in at the beginning of each term, because if, for example, the Holy Roman Empire ends up going to war with France, there's an excellent chance they won't be so interested in us, and then we could do something else. Plus, of course, you know, there's nothing to stop you still building, for example, fortresses. You can still build fortresses out in the world, which is very, very nice indeed. Hamburg, however, most definitely needs roads so I can actually move things around. That is a good starting point. But you'll notice that unlike in Ourhaus, where we could only build, like, well, actually... Interesting about cities, you can build infantry training facilities, but they only train really kind of crappy basic infantry. You are, however, allowed to train things like ballistas and other forms of heavy artillery. So you can make catapults and trebuchets and ballistas in towns. They're the one kind of advanced thing you're allowed to always build in a town at this point in the game, which is kind of interesting. But down here in Hamburg, we immediately have some other stuff. So, for example, we've got a basic mustering hall here that lets me train peasants. That's not so good, but obviously that is literally one turn to build. We can get in some better stuff in time. But also, we've got ourselves stables, so I can start training some cavalry, and indeed the first basic archery range, so I can train some peasant archers of my own. One thing that might surprise you, however, if you've just come here from Rome Total War and you don't know this game very well, is right now, this place literally is just a castle. There's no other infrastructure here. So you're probably looking at this and thinking, well, I won't be able to train anything here. No! On the contrary, the other nice thing about castles is castles can fundamentally train some pretty damn good stuff. So, for example, not right now, because this is going to take some time to recharge, but basically, give it a few more turns, then just because I literally have a castle here, it can fundamentally train some stuff. So it can train dismounted Huskarls, who are, as you can see, pretty bloody good, all things considered. Defense 15, attack 11. This is what Denmark's really good at, by the way. Loads of their people have, like, axes, and axes are basically fundamentally good against armor. And armor is ultimately the bane of your existence. There's loads of elite units in this game that have really, really flipping tough armor. So having loads of units that are actually effective against armor is pretty damn good. Like, every faction has its own way of dealing with armor. So, for example, England has a bunch of archers that have the special ability that their bows are effective against armor and basically get to have some armor piercingness. Whereas me, I actually get, like, armor-piercing infantry all over the shop. France, meanwhile, just has tons of cavalry. The Spanish, meanwhile, have loads of, like, skirmishers who are effective against armor. Like, each faction has its own way of dealing with the really, really heavily armored units. So give it a little bit of time, I'll actually be able to produce scouts even though I don't have stables. I'll be able to produce Viking raiders. Again, these guys are pretty bloody decent. Attack 9, defense 9. And this is at a place that's got literally no built infrastructure. These guys just come out of this thing automatically. You'll also notice down here, by the way, that you've actually got 3 slots available in order to do training. This was another huge change from Rome Total War. In Rome Total War, every town can produce one thing in one turn. Doesn't matter whether it's like, you know, an elite unit of cavalry. Well, actually, in all fairness, sometimes some units took 2 turns to train. But basically, you could train one thing at a time, is the point I'm trying to make. Whereas in Medieval 2, different buildings could train different numbers of things in one go. So over here in Ourhaus, by the way, I'm actually allowed to train 2 units in a single turn. I'm allowed to train 2 units of town militia if that's what I want to do. This meant that in Medieval 2, you didn't always have to have like your standing army ready to go and train up immediately. Because in Rome Total 1, basically, once you had a decent economy going, you just basically pick an area that had good kind of military infrastructure. For me and the Brutii, it was Greece. And you'd just be constantly pumping troops out of that. Because like it was always worth having an army ready to go for when you did need it later. In Medieval 2, because you can train armies up so much faster, that's not so important. Because like even just like, you know, these are my first 2 settlements and I can basically get 5 units trained in a single turn before the next turn is done. So as a result, like it wasn't so crucially important. Though there was also another really important change, which is in Rome Total War, like when you had units and you moved them into town for repairs or upgrading, then you could basically just like fill up the bar. That's not allowed anymore. If I want to repair something or upgrade it by like taking it to a town that's got a blacksmith or whatever, that now actually fills up one of your 3 slots, which again is a really, really sensible and good improvement I actually approve of. Because yeah, in Rome Total War, there was the problem that you could just basically produce really crappy hastati everywhere and then they'd shove them down to somewhere that had like an awesome Temple of Mars and they'd become superpowered supermen overnight, like 9 at a time. And that just was a bit too good at creating superpowered armies, so you can't do that anymore. And also I think upgrading in this game actually feels a little bit more expensive than it did in Rome, or possibly it's just because I've got less money so it feels a lot more expensive even if it actually isn't. Now, roads in production Hamburg, and I can't actually recruit anything, though you may notice I can retrain something. This was another beautiful improvement I loved in Medieval 2. You are actually allowed to retrain mercenaries if there are nearby mercenaries. So actually, like, you know, if there was a mercenary spearman available to buy nearby, or rather as soon as one regenerates, because I've bought all the mercenary spearmen already, then I'll actually be able to retrain my mercenary spearmen without having to bother buying the spearmen, bringing him into the city, merging him into these units, etc, etc, etc. It made life so much easier. It was just a beautiful quality of life improvement. Speaking of which, these spear militia, yeah, this is nothing you need to do, kind of start learning pretty quickly. Yeah, which units come out of castles and which units come out of towns. Because sure, castles were way, way better at producing way more and way better units, but still, there was actually a role in armies for kind of militia troops that came out of cities, and you couldn't actually retrain units that just came out of cities at castles. So as a result, yeah, we're going to want this guy to go back to Ourhaus for retraining at some point. He can't retrain right now because Ourhaus literally has no way of retraining them. He doesn't have the town guard yet. We may want to consider that at some point or other. But for the time being, probably what we want to do is, yeah, we need to figure out what we're going to build at Ourhaus now. Because as is often the case in a Total War game, you start off with a generous treasury. We've got 7,700, so we can basically spend on whatever we want right now. We've got a market that allows you to basically get more money through trade. But if we look at these settlement details right now, trade is not making that much and probably won't for quite some time. You're going to make the majority of your money through taxes. Like back in the old days, in flipping Rome to the war, because this place had a port, it would already be producing ridiculous money. No. This place is not going to produce ridiculous money for quite some time, in fact. That's just not going to be a thing. So until you've actually kind of got yourself up to, say, a minor city, trade's just not going to be a huge part of your income. I mean, this isn't bad, because Ourhaus is actually kind of, you know, not so bad in terms of, like, the resources it's got, if we look at its kind of trade summary. Because it's got all of its beautiful amber and fish, which is lovely. But even so, it's not going to make that much money. Alternatively, like in the early game, I think you'll actually find in Medieval 2, doing farm upgrades is actually pretty bloody sensible. Because that will actually get you up to, yeah, 2021 up to 276 in 2 turns. Whereas if we could spend 3 turns on the market and go up from... Well, actually, it's already kind of flashing at me. I think it's... I'm not sure why it does that. I've seen this happen in Medieval 2 before. I'm not sure exactly what it's trying to indicate when it's saying that. Also, high trade now also increases population growth, which is really, really damn cool. I approve of that. This is also what chivalry does, by the way. This is why chivalry is much better than dread. Both chivalry and dread, each point is worth 5% in public order. So, you know, whether you're 10 out of 10 in chivalry or 10 out of 10 in dread, that's still plus 50% of public order. However, dread has no influence on population population growth whatsoever. Chivalry does. Each point in chivalry is worth 0.5 in population growth. So basically, chivalrous people were just superior if they were actually sitting on cities. You always wanted as many chivalrous people as possible. Now as for Ourhaus, as we can't really train much that's good here, I'm actually going to get a diplomat going on. Good old diplomat for making deals and whatnot, always flipping useful. And as for the building... so other than, yeah, potentially getting some better growth and food coming in, or a brothel, which is now where you get spies. Spies, of course, and assassins used to be tied to markets. Now markets are separate entities, and spies and assassins have moved over into the brothel tree. But you know what? I think we should probably actually go for a town guard. Also, thing I really flipping loved, in towns, town guards actually increase law, which makes perfect sense and also gave you an incentive. Loads of buildings that kind of gave you no advantage in Rome Total War. So, for example, say like the Academy, for example, you only built that because you wanted to train generals. If there was no general there, it was pointless. In Medieval 2, things like that always basically give an extra 5% to happiness or law or something. So every building has a point, even if you're not actually using it at that exact moment in time, which is really, really nice. I'm going to actually build a town watch, because spear militia are not that bad. Plus, I actually don't have that many spearmen. As the Vikings, I have a lot of axemen and swordsmen. I don't have much in the way of shields. So having spear militia and being able to retrain my spear militia that I've already got could potentially be very, very useful. Plus, it's an extra flipping 5% to law, so that's not the worst thing in the world either. Now, we've also got Captain Harkin over here, who could go over here, because, yeah, we've got, there's 2 settlements dotted around to the north. We don't need to worry about them in a hurry, though, because no one's going to go and be getting them anytime soon. So we can go and pick them up later. There's Oslo somewhere around here-ish, and Stockholm somewhere around here-ish. So we can go and get them at, like, our convenience, but no one's going to go get them anytime soon. So instead, we should probably just send our strength around here and start basically taking part in the European land grab as quickly as we can. So we've got a diplomat coming in soon. Fortunately, we've already got a diplomat. And that diplomat is our princess. I love princesses. I think a lot of people don't really kind of put much thought into princesses. And I can understand why. The thing about princesses in Medieval 2 is princesses in Medieval 2 are an endangered species. Pretty much every faction starts with one, but then you might well never see one again. They're very, very rare. You don't see them very much at all. So, like, you know, at the beginning of the game, loads of them are floating around, but after that, you never really see them again, which is a shame, because princesses are really, really fun. Princesses are basically diplomats who, rather than having diplomacy, have a charm rating. So in this case, 3 out of 10, delicate enough to win over a simpler sort of man easily enough. Now, princesses can just go around and do normal diplomat things. Not all diplomat things, by the way. Princesses are not allowed to bribe. Only diplomats may bribe. But princesses can do absolutely everything else that a diplomat can, which is really, really good. And if princesses go around and do diplomatic deals, then they increase their charm. Right now they've got diplomatic ability. She can upgrade to, like, say, diplomatic weapon. That increases her charm. Now that is useful, because a charming princess has all sorts of benefits as time goes on. When it becomes relevant, we'll get to it. Basically, you want to kind of train up your princesses. And this is a thing that I think a lot of people miss about Medieval 2 and its agent system. Because in Medieval 2, you weren't supposed to recruit agents, then send them off to do their job. You actually had to invest in their training, which I really, really flipping liked. So this woman, we're going to very carefully invest in her training, and I'm going to see, hopefully, I'm going to show you what a really good princess can do over time. So obviously we want her heading south because we want her to do some diplomacy. So if she just heads down south, and Hamburg will train some roads in a minute, so she'll be able to move a bit further next turn, she can head down into Frankfurt and she can have a chat with the Holy Roman Empire. We've also got ourselves a priest here. Basically, he's just a religious unit. Denmark is a Catholic nation at this point in history, so as a result, any priest I train, and I can't train anymore right now because I don't have a church. If I built a church, I'd be able to do that. Then I could basically have my priests going around. While they're inside a territory, they make it more Catholic. You can kind of keep an eye on the religion of a territory over in the settlement details. So right now, this area is 82% Catholic. There's a tiny bit of heresy, tiny bit of paganism, and a tiny bit of orthodoxy. Cities that were uniformly one religion are pretty easy to actually kind of take care of. Cities only really got into trouble in this game when you had clashing religions. So Spain runs into that, because Spain has some problems with the Moors sending up preachers of Islam from the south. So as a result, yeah, they've actually got kind of areas that are half Catholic and half Islam, and that causes some religious tension down in that part of the world. So as a result, yeah, up here, that's fine for now. So don't need to worry too much about this guy. But we might need to worry about it later, because over here somewhere, there's Russia. And they're Orthodox. And down over here, we've got the Byzantines, and they're Orthodox. So their preachers might show up at some point, and if they do, they're going to start making things tricky for us. So for the most part, we can ignore him. For now, we don't need to worry too much about him. Merchants, however, I love. I absolutely love merchants. A lot of people I've spoken to really hate merchants because they don't do much and people feel they're not really worth the effort and the investment, but I think they are, and they make the map a bit more interesting. So basically, you see these resources floating around, and that would just be a good way of figuring out, like, you know, what's likely to be available to trade and whether a town ought to be a good trading town. Now, basically, a merchant, which you trade at towns, and it's basically capped by what level your infrastructure in terms of markets are. So right now, I think we've got, it's called the grain exchange. Some of these names, by the way, might not be what you're expecting. This is because I believe they changed it between the English and the American versions. So I think in some versions, this is called the corn exchange, whereas in my version, it's going to be called the grain exchange. So you may see things that aren't quite what you're expecting them to be called. That's why. So basically, yeah, I can only have one merchant, so I can't train another one right now, because I'm at the agent limit. But I'm pretty sure if I was to train a market, I'd be allowed to train an extra merchant. Merchants, basically, right now don't do anything. They cost like, they cost like, 550 to recruit, but their upkeep is 0. They don't cost anything to upkeep, so they're making their own money. If I sent him to go and stand on this fish up here, that's worth 15 florins a turn. He could go and stand on this amber up here for 18 florins a turn, or 15 florins a turn. And you're probably thinking, well, it's going to take him a very, very long time to make his money back. And indeed it will, which is why a lot of people don't bother with merchants. But again, if you properly train them and invest in them, then you can get some really, really good stuff out of it. So I'm just going to send him up here to go and stand on this fish right now. So right now he's trading fish and he's generating 15 florins a turn. So we started with him anyway, so we haven't actually paid anything for him. But you might think, well, I don't want to pay 550 for that, because that's going to take like, what, 40, 50 years or something to pay back, and there's a good chance he'll die of old age, given they might start at age of 30. There's a good chance he won't even kind of, you know, repay his training cost by the time he dies. But there's a lot more you can do with these guys. They're really, really damn fun, I promise. So we'll leave him up there and we'll get to him next turn as well. Yeah, actually, I totally want to send some more troops down south. I will actually send as much as I can down south. Is that fine? Okay, fine. I'll leave one spear militia up here. There we are. That's fine. So you now head down here as well. Join up with these guys. We'll actually have a decent army here. Lovely. I should also, by the way, have a look at our king. King Canoodle over here. So, yeah, shield bearer. -1 morale for all troops on the battlefield. Well, that's no flipping good, is it? So, aspiring commander, talent for command, risky attacker. Ooh, +1 morale for all troops on the battlefield, +2 command attacking. Okay, good. Well, that offsets shield bearer. Now, unfortunately, you can't just move a retinue around anymore. That was a fun thing in Rome Total War, but they removed it. And while I dislike the fact they removed it, I understand why they did, because it was stupid that you could keep someone alive for literally centuries. Religiously proper and budding bureaucrat. Okay. You're not so bad, but then generally your starting generals aren't so bad at all. So you will do, I agree, sure. You stay here for the time being. And that's probably all we can do this turn, so let's end our very first turn and see what else happens in the world, if anything. And naturally, some flipping... Ooh! Well, that's good. It would appear the Holy Roman Empire are actually invading. Now, a suitable prince betrothed Ingrid. That's our princess, our actual kind of agent on the map. So basically, someone wants to marry her. Do not accept under any circumstances. Just don't. Don't do it. Unless he's like the most amazing person and he's also really, really damn young. Because basically this is giving up our princess. She'll disappear off the map if we marry him and he will instead basically take her place. So we really don't want him to do that. I mean, he's not bad. He's loyal. He's eager. He's a proven commander. But that's not great. Okay, and he's 35. I want someone younger than that. That's not good enough to give up a princess. Too many people I see playing this game, they basically, like, you know, they swap their princess for the first vaguely decentish bloke that shows up, and you shouldn't. Decline. Constantly decline. Now, what do you want me to do? You want me to take over this city over here. Fine, we might go and take that castle in time. That's no problem at all. Now, we want you to speak to this person immediately. Though first, let's just check if we've got anything here. Diplomats, construction, dirt roads. We constructed dirt roads. No. Lovely. And yes, indeed, you can see that. We're not doing so hot in the world. Yeah, right now we are 15th in the world out of 1820 factions. Yeah, 15th in the world militarily. We're not doing so bad financially, which is nice. But yeah, and everything else, we've got a lot of catching up to do right now. Hopefully, this Imperial army was just coming up here to Hamburg because they thought it was rebel. And hopefully, they'll naff off now. Because if they don't, I really want to have a flipping war with the Imperials right flipping now. Right, let's just have a quick chat with you. So, yeah, if there were actually a general, this is the other thing that a princess can do. If there was actually a general in that army that I really wanted to get my hands on, then I could actually try and marry him, or I suppose, like, seduce him, and then, like, we'd have to marry afterwards, or something like that anyway. And basically, her chance to succeed is based on her charm rating, which is why we want to also get her charm up. Because if she's really, really damn charming, then potentially we can actually snipe generals that we'd like to have in our faction of other factions. And it's not a declaration of war, which is hilarious. But instead, we want to enter diplomacy with this guy here. So right now, we're neutral with these guys. And the fun thing about playing in Denmark is, right now, we are very, very weak in power, whereas they've got at least some decent level of power. So I can't go making demands of these guys because we are the weaker power. This is also why I didn't want to actually kind of play as France, because France starts off as one of the most powerful empires in Europe. So as a result, you can basically just kind of go around throwing your weight around and like demanding trade rights and map information, and you can basically make an alliance with whoever you want to. Me, however, I can't just make an alliance with whoever I want because I'd be the weaker party. Instead, I'm willing to offer them, ooh, they consider trade rights generous. Okay, this is another nice thing, by the way. Now you can actually see like how good a proposal is, so you can basically make it fair. So I can probably squeeze a tiny bit of money out of this. Could I get... Yeah, actually, I'm going to offer trade rights for map information. See how that goes. Ooh. Okay, trade rights, map information. Interesting. They want trade rights and map information for 410. Go for a counter-offer. You always want to make it a counter-offer because you want to be the one who puts the offer to them because you want to get the benefit from having kind of put together the deal that was accepted. So how about trade rights and map information for map information? That's balanced.
Very well, if it will please you.
There we go. So we put together a deal. He accepts it. I've got everything I want. I've got trade rights and I've got map information. I can also offer to actually marry the princess to their faction heir, which basically just guarantees an alliance. But again, that causes a sacrifice to the princess. We don't want to do that right now. Now, there's no point even having an alliance with these guys. And by the way, traits increase, delicate diplomat. Because Ingrid put together an offer that they liked, she has now just got a little bit more charming. So she is now better than she used to be. She's now at 4 out of 10. About as enthralling as one expects from a princess. Damning with faint praise there, aren't we, game? But yeah, we've got the map information, which is obviously much more useful because these guys have way more map information than me. I didn't know what was going on in the world, but now, as a result, I now know about all these territories. And also, he's kind of got like eyes on a little bit of Milan territory and Venice over here, for example, and some kind of rebel territory around here as well. So that is very, very useful indeed. Now, probably what I want to do straight away is I probably want my spy to actually head down south towards the Imperials to keep an eye on those guys as quickly as possible. So probably, yeah, if he goes down to this crossroads, that will probably be a good place for him to be. So then he can keep an eye on... This is actually the Imperial capital. The nearest Imperial city is actually the capital, so there'll actually be some decent trading facilities there. Not that great, because it is a city, not a castle. Their castles are further down to the south around here. But, yeah... It's never a good idea to have the Imperials that close, because sooner or later, there will be war with the Empire. There's no point having an alliance with them. In fact, actually, we don't want an alliance with them. We want to have a war with them, because there's an excellent chance at some point they might fall out of favour with the Pope, for example, and then basically it's open season. We can go nuts on those guys. But for the time being, we don't need to worry about that. We just need to worry about where we're going to be heading next. What did you actually promise me, by the way, in terms of the mission? 2,500 florins if I go and take that little settlement down there. Doesn't look particularly well guarded, and sure, that would probably be a decent thing to take over, I agree. The question is, do I dare leave Hamburg completely unguarded when the flipping Imperials are actually in our territory? I don't really want to give them the opportunity, quite frankly. So I'm going to leave at least some forces here to guard this place. But Prince Charles needs to head in this way, because Prince Charles is our faction heir. And what you'll probably notice pretty quickly in this game is the family tree is a lot smaller than it used to be. So literally we've just got, yeah, we've got our king. He's married. He right now has 3 children. He's got himself a son, he's got his daughter, who's our princess, therefore, and our actual guy. So at some point we need to convert her into a general by getting her married. And we've also got Cecile, who's only age 2. So it's going to be a very long time before we get a new princess coming in. And if he does have another child, then hopefully a son, then it's going to be a long time before he comes in. So the family trees are relatively slow to grow. So instead you have to recruit generals. But generals aren't part of your family tree. The family tree is much, much smaller than it really used to be. Because just because you bring a general into the family, like if someone does really well in a battle like a captain, you promote them, they're not brought into the family. They're instead just a general, so they're considered separate. So as a result, we've got to be really careful with these guys. And it's also very important we get these guys as good as possible, as quickly as possible. So Charles and your other kind of family members, particularly the faction heir, you want to do as much as you can to get these guys as good as possible. So we want him to be involved in like every single flipping fight. So you, my good man, are totally heading out. Let's just top up these guys. Lovely. Yep, he can head out in this direction. That's fine. So step out of there. We don't have to worry about the happiness of the castle, because castles you never worry about happiness. Yeah, let's send peasant archers and spear militia into here. That's fine. And you know what? 1 more peasant archers just to keep this place a little bit safe. How many troops are here? A decent-ish number, yeah. Spear militia, some actual mailed knights. They're just basic heavy cavalry. Not as good as my general, but, you know, pretty darn decent. They've still got a good, healthy charge on them, and some peasant archers. So, in which case...
My lord.
Yeah, you know what? I'll send you another spear militia just to keep you safe. And the rest of you guys can head over in this direction and join up to King Charles later. But he instead wants to, for now, head over here and build me a watchtower because I'd like to see what's going on. And yes, indeed, we've got Stettin over there, a brand new castle. But you can see there, bit better guarded. 6 units in that one, so be a bit careful here. So you can head down here. Do you have anything new to hire? No, just 2 mercenary crossbowmen. They're really, really powerful. They are literally the only long-range firepower I'm probably ever going to have. Because the thing about Denmark, and one of the reasons I wanted to play Denmark, is Denmark is very much a faction about the infantry. They have relatively poor long-range troops. In fact, actually, they're one of the only factions in the game that has literally 0 long-range archers. Every other faction has, at some point in its tech tree, access to long-range and direct fire. Excluding, like, artillery, obviously. But Denmark doesn't. Denmark just has, like, the normal basic range archers. Pretty powerful ones, but it's not its strong suit. So this is part of the reason why I really wanted to play with Denmark, because Denmark is going to be a really, really different faction. I'm going to have to play completely differently to how I played in Rome Total War. So hopefully, it's going to make a nice change. But you know what, ladies and gentlemen, I think that is more than enough for now to kick us off. I know there's a fair bit of explaining to do in the first part. It's because there's so much that's changed, so I did kind of need to go into the differences between Rome and Medieval 2. But next time, our adventure begins proper. Prince Charles is going to have to head down south and take as much territory as he can. And after that, we need to figure out where we're going to go next. Because there's a lot of ways we could expand. Do we risk going east and potentially kind of run into the Polish? Do we potentially try and push as far south as possible? Even down here to Prague. Because, yeah, we've got Prague here. Nice city, nice large town. Very, very profitable. But a large town right next to the Imperials, very exposed, could be risky. But do we head over here towards Antwerp, for example, where there are some really, really valuable places on the coast, but again, that brings us a bit close to both England and France. Risks and opportunities in every direction, ladies and gentlemen, and we will have to figure out what the lay of the land is diplomatically and who goes to war with who to see how we are going to negotiate that. Because right now, we are a very small fish in the very big pond of Europe, and that is exactly what I wanted out of this campaign. So, welcome to Medieval 2 Total War. Oh, I'm thrilled to be playing this. It's such a wonderful, wonderful game, and we shall see what happens next week, ladies and gentlemen. Just as a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, I've been kind of mixing things up a little bit. What I've decided to do is I'm going to do 2 episodes of this a week. This series is going to be every Thursday and Sunday. I know Rome was 3 episodes a week. I kind of wanted to give Skyrim a go on Tuesday and Saturday. So we're going to see how that goes for a bit. We might change that up depending on how it all goes. For the time being, next episode is going to be Thursday. We're going to do 2 episodes of this a week. And in all fairness, they're probably going to be pretty long episodes, so hopefully that will be enough. But in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, I've been John, this has been Many a True Nerd, and welcome to Medieval 2 Total War, the beginning of our amazing Viking adventure. Thank you very much, and goodbye. And our guys go in, and I think we completely missed. We totally missed. And a double charge. Oh, that's what we needed to be seeing. Nice. Give them something to think about while they're going home, Balthazar. Got my timing just about right there. Stupid gits.